Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. In today's talk, I was going to discuss the planetary transits or Gochara that are happening in September 2025. It seems like the theme for this moment or this month is organizing unsettled mind and emotions. So, again, this talk is from a Vedic astrology or Jyotish perspective, so ancient Indian astrology that's more than 5,000 years old. So, let's go ahead and take a look. A note beforehand, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support. And it might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. Okay, so some announcements and orientation, especially if you're new to the channel. So I am offering a level 1 Vedic astrology course coming up in January 2026. I made a little video so you can learn a little bit more about it. If you're interested, you can email heartlightastro@yahoo.com for an application or to be put on an email list for future offerings. And the application will be available Monday, September 29th. Okay. Also, we have eclipses coming September 7th to 21st this month. And I have several eclipse videos listed here that you can check out if you want to learn how to work with the energy of eclipses because they can be tricky. Okay. Also, all of my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology or my concepts playlist, they can be found there. Wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on the subject that you'd like to learn more. My channel is all about playlists so that videos are easy to find. So like this type of talk on planet or monthly transits is in my Gochara transits playlist. Also, if you'd like to learn astrology by looking at famous charts of famous people, places, moments in time, and in my monthly videos, if you're not familiar, I do usually go through 3 famous charts, which I'll be doing today. But I have a video titled Birth Chart Archive List 2025, where I list all the birth charts, famous birth charts I've analyzed on the channel and the videos you can find them in. Also, my latest videos, in case you've missed any, Aquarius Constellation Kumbh Rashi National Birth Chart of India, New Moon or Amavasya on 23rd August 2025, and then Colors and Vedic Astrology. And then if you're new to all this, and would like to learn more, the best place to start are these videos that I've listed at the bottom of the slide. These are foundational videos that help you, start to learn Vedic astrology or at least get more out of books like this. Okay, so let's take a look at the transit dates when things are moving around in the sky and talk about what all that means through the video today. So September 3rd, Venus enters Ashlesha Nakshatra and Mars enters Chitra Nakshatra. If you're not familiar, nakshatras are also called lunar mansions. There are about 27 of them. And every night the moon passes through a different nakshatra, and they all have different energies. So after the moon passes through 27 nakshatras, you get a lunar month. Okay. So then on September 4th, Jupiter has an exact aspect with Rahu. September 6th, Mercury enters Purva Falguni Nakshatra. September 7th, there's a lunar eclipse or chandra grahan going on in Aquarius or Kumbh. And this is in the nakshatra Purva Bhadrapada. September 10th, Sun crosses Ketu. September 11th, Mercury crosses Ketu. September 13th, Sun and Mercury both enter Uttara Falguni Nakshatra. September 14th, Venus enters Leo or Simha and Maga Nakshatra simultaneously. September 15th, Mercury enters Virgo or Kanya. 16th of September, Sun enters Virgo, which is a samkranti or shift of signs for Sun. September 17th, Mercury is an exact mutual aspect with Saturn. September 19th, Mars entered Libra to La. September 20th, Mercury enters Hasta Nakshatra. September 21st, Sun has an exact mutual aspect with Saturn. And the same day, there's a solar eclipse going on, surya grahan in Virgo or Kanya in Uttara Falguni Nakshatra. Then September 23rd, Mars enters Swati Nakshatra. September 25th, Venus enters Purva Falguni Nakshatra. September 26th, Sun enters Hasta Nakshatra. And then September 28th, Mercury enters Chitra Nakshatra. Okie doke. So, what does all this mean? All right, so let's first take a look at how the sky pattern is shifting from the beginning of the month to the end of the month. Okay. And what I've done here in these 2 charts is I've oriented the chart so that we have an Aries rising chart in both of these. The reason why is that when you put Aries, the first constellation, also known as Mesha in Sanskrit, in the first house, you get what's called a natural zodiac, which is essentially a birth chart for the whole world or all of humanity. Okay. So if you're not familiar, these are North Indian style charts. So to orient you, at the top of each chart, the top diamond in the middle, there happens to be a little 1 in the bottom corner. That top diamond in the middle is called the ascendant, rising sign, first house, also lugna in Sanskrit. Okay, and this represents the eastern horizon. So this is the potentially rising sign for when someone or something's being born. Okay. So that little 1 in the bottom corner, it's kind of convenient because it's the first house, but that little 1 is there not because it's the first house, but because we have the first constellation of Aries or Mesha in the first house. So these are both, again, Aries or Mesha, Aries rising or Mesha lugna charts. Okay. So we can compare, apples to apples, oranges to oranges, that sort of thing. Okay, so let's take a look at the chart on the left first. So this is September 1st, 2025. 21:09 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, or New York time, is the exact setting for this. For that's the time zone that I live in. And again, we have Aries rising, Mesha Lugna here. So the moon nakshatra is in Mula. Okay, so we might have kind of a hard start to the month, frankly, from this. Mula is symbolized by a bunch of roots tied together. And the deity associated with Mula Nakshatra, and again, nakshatras are, those lunar mansions I mentioned, the 27 of them that each have a different, energy associated with them, or symbology associated with them. Mula is associated with the deity Nriti, which is a form of the goddess Kali, who is the goddess of death and destruction. So, like I said, intense. And so the moon is in the 9th house here. The 9th house represents government, authority, father, religion, guru, also spiritual community, also long distance travel. Okay, so there might be disruptions here. Okay, and especially because we have a bunch of malefics, on the moon here. We have Saturn, which is a planet representing delays and obstacles, chronic problems, death, destruction, that sort of thing. That's on the moon. We have what is it? We have Mars on the moon. The Mars is a leadership planet, but it's also fiery, rebellious, innovative, but also potentially hostile. So we have that malefic there, and then we also have Ketu, which is the south node of the moon. Okay, and Ketu is sort of like Mars, like rebellious and kind of erratic, but even more so. Plus, Ketu has this energy of being kind of hidden, unexpected. So just from those three, again, there can be an abrupt shift in mind because the moon represents the mind, especially the emotional mind, but also, again, maybe government or authority, religion, that sort of thing. We do have on there a little bit of protection because also besides these three natural malefics, Saturn, Mars, and Ketu on the moon. So that's going to be, especially when moon is in Mula anyway. Besides these three negative influences, you're going to have a very usually people have very kind of more destructive mindset, or like a almost like because we were talking about like the symbol of Mula is roots, so it's almost like ripping the roots out. Especially when you have these three natural malefics here. Okay. Mula is not always bad, but there's this energy of transformation. Okay. Because with the roots, like I think of farming with Mula, which might seem a little bit odd because farming's all about growth, and there can be positive growth coming from Mula, but that usually comes from kind of more of a benefic influence. Okay. And we do have Jupiter aspecting its own house, because in the 9th house we have Sagittarius or Danu Rashi, which is owned or ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter's aspecting there. So there's a little bit of protection, but it's more protection related to, I would say, inanimate things. Okay. More than like relationships. So any kind of relationships associated with 9th house, which is like, again, leaders, gurus or teachers, father potentially, spiritual community. There can be some major shifts going on here. Okay, and the mind, again, the emotion is the emotional mind, intuitive mind. So there's a lot that's, it's churning in the mental realm here, mental and emotional realm. Okay, just to start off on the first of the month. Okay, but then you can see the dasha period. So the dasha period is the planetary period, and the planetary period is like the dasha period. You can think of the planets listed here are planets that have more influence or kind of more active during this time. So what do we have listed here? We have K2, Mars, Sun, and Mercury. So K2 and Mars, these are the two disruptive, rebellious, kind of, especially when you get the energies together, explosive, energy, and those are the ones that are on the moon. Okay, so definitely a lot of mental churning going on here. Then we have Sun, and you can see Sun is in the 5th house here. So, I forgot to mention that. So to get from the first house, the ascendant at the top, to the other houses, you count counterclockwise in a North Indian style chart. Okay, so if you start at the top and count inclusively and go counterclockwise or up and to the left, count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you get to that kind of orange circle with Mercury, Sun, and Ketu in the 5th house. Okay, and then you keep counting around at 12 before you get back to 1 again. So K2 is in the 5th house here. Sun is lighting up and Mercury. So these 3 planets in the 5th house is lighting up pretty strongly here. And we've got Mars as well. Well, let's talk about the 5th house because obviously that's where we're at. Well, we've got Mercury, Sun, and K2 here. These 3 planets in the 5th house. This is what we call a pravraja yoga, or it's kind of similar to the Western concept of a stellium. Okay. So there's a lot of focus and energy here because we have all these planets sort of in a gaggle in the 5th house. The 5th house represents things like advisement. It represents things like a stage. It represents things like children. It represents things like creativity. It also represents things like romance. Okay. So there is some protection because Sun is in its own sign. We've got Leo in the 5th house here, and Sun owns Leo. So Sun is protecting here a little bit. But Mercury is here, and Sun represents. Oh, I should mention that Sun represents like king, president, authority, government, father. Okay, so there's some protection here, but again, mostly of inanimate things. And Sun is in a nakshatra at this point called Purva Falguni. It just switched nakshatras, I think it was yesterday. Purva Falguni is all about like the finer things of life and enjoyment. Like some of the how would I say, like really symbols of Purva Falguni are like a hammock or a marital bed. Okay, so they can be like relationships and socializing, that sort of thing. There's some protection here, but we've also got this K2. Okay, and K2 is also at this point in Purva Falguni, I believe. We're just about to switch into Purva Falguni. Let me just check on that. Hold on. Okay, so yes, it is K2's in Purva Falguni as well. So there can be a lot of creativity related to this, enjoyment, and just almost hedonism, really, which you might find here. So this might be like, especially with the strong Sun in its own house, this is somebody who's like exerting their authority, okay, and maybe in a very public way. With K2 here, this is going to bring this hidden, unexpected twist to the whole thing, okay? And Mercury is here. Mercury represents the analytical, logical mind. So this can be decisions, thoughts, speech, okay, writing. And so with these 3 together, you can get like a leader or authority who's, really basically power tripping, doing some really unusual things, saying and, thinking and, maybe through emails and texts and that sort of, because technology can be represented by K2. He's really kind of causing some chaos here, okay? And there's some enjoyment involved, which is a little bit twisted. Okay, so again, that's why it's sort of like a power trip. Okay, and then Mercury is over here. Mercury's not in Purva Falguni like Sun and Ketu, but Mercury's in a nakshatra called Maga. Maga is symbolized by a throne. Okay, so this is kind of like getting the last word in. Even if it's not authority, this might be like if it's like could be a friend because Mercury represents friends. Um, like getting last word in or having like, a verbal fight, that sort of thing, kind of like an intellectual fight, like a debate, maybe, that sort of thing. So, Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I think most of you know the other thing I do, my day job is I'm a physician, and like literally last week, we're on vacation today because today's Labor Day in the United States, but last week, all the patients I'd come in, it was kind of funny because it was more like psych than medical, like or like therapy sessions almost than medical. Um, because everybody was coming in with all these strange, bizarre power dynamic stories. And I was like, well, there you have it. Mercury, Sun, K2, in Leo here. Because again, the sun is a fiery planet, as we know, but it's going to be super strong here. So it's going to be like really asserting influence, but in like strange, weird, bizarre ways. And so, also, a lot of people were talking about how like relationships were being disrupted, like strangely. And part of the reason why is because K2 is here with the sun, and the sun is dispositor or landlord because sun owns Leo here where K2 is sitting. That means you're going to get 5 and 9 aspects of K2. So you're not only getting K2 in the fifth house, but you're getting K2 in the first house, which represents overall energy for the chart or time, both physically and psychologically. And also, again, K2 is aspecting the ninth house, which is, again, authority, government. So twice over, both through symbology of the planets as well as the houses that they're in, you're getting like strange advice coming from authority figures here. Okay. And probably inflammatory as well and destructive even. So like I said, it's kind of a hard start to the month. So we have a bunch of, I mentioned the pravraja yoga, these 3 planets in the fifth house. So that's going to give a focus to, again, fifth house matters. Okay. And it's in Leo. So this is like from a high level authority or like a public stage, type of way. Okay. It could also be creativity as well. And because we're kind of straddling here the maga energy or throne, again, leadership energy through Mercury, but also Sun and Ketu, which in Purva Falguni. And sometimes you get like, like I would get like unusual, from this, I would get potentially like unusual creative endeavors like coming through. Um, yeah. So, yeah, so it's kind of a weird mix going on here in the fifth house. Okay. So, in addition to the pravraja yoga, and yoga in Vedic astrology, usually that means planetary yoga or combination that gives special meta effects. So, besides all that, we've got Buddha Ditya yoga, that's Mercury and Sun together in the same sign. It's qualified here. So, that gives intelligence, especially like a calculating math science type of analytical intelligence. We also have a Kesari yoga here because of the relative placement of Jupiter and Moon. That's going to give a networking type of yoga. And again, we're affecting here the at least spiritual community, okay, in the ninth house because that's where the moon is. Also, Jupiter is in the third house of neighbors and siblings. So there can be like, again, network issues, especially going on here, even though, again, Mars and K2 are not directly aspecting Jupiter because Saturn, K2, and Mars are on the moon. So we're really like, crunching the moon here, the intuitive, emotional mind. And the moon is reflecting on Jupiter. So indirectly, this is affecting the third house. Okay. Then we have a Chandramangala yoga. That's relative placement of moon and Mars. So there's property and, it's related to property and wealth. So there's something going on there, which is also not surprising because from this fifth house, the Mercury and Sun are aspecting the 11th house of income. Okay. And clubs, group society. So, again, this is a collective level thing going on here. We do have solar yoga here because of the relative placement of Venus and Mars to the Sun. It's partly going to be supportive and partly going to be detractive because Venus is a natural benefic and Mars is a natural malefic. So there can be kind of like a spin doctor type of thing going on with this authority figure who's speaking out and doing strange things. Like they might be spinning it like, oh, this is all for the greater good and blah, 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 but their actions are going to be fairly aggressive here. Probably destructive as well. Then we have Kahala and Parvata yogas here, which both indicate leadership. Okay. So again, in many ways, we keep looking at like strange, unusual leadership and strength, power, that sort of thing. So again, a lot of unusual actions are related to authority and power. This might be, instead of a divide and conquer, this might be a surprise and conquer, type of energy with this, because it's going to be like out of the blue, like your boss or somebody might be like trying to prove something and then do some strange things. So you can also think of this as like an authority coloring outside of the lines. Okay. And also because of this K2-5-9 aspect, again, this is influencing a lot of this chart, especially this, K2, this divisive, separatist, can be explosive energy. And this sun in K2, so again, the fire sign sun, K2 is also considered a fire sign as well, or fire planet. These two fire planets in a fixed fire sign. This is like nonstop. So whatever's going on here, it's like nonstop. Like there's no, break, or balance here going on. This is like, this could also be like almost like a manic type of energy. I mean, it could be psychological, um, like literally psychological, but like the you know, behavior is really off the hook. Okay. So we have all this going on in the fixed fire sign of Leo in the fifth house, but then you get this K2 and Mars. So again, I mentioned when you get Mars and K2, you get explosive energy right at the top. So you're going to be putting out fires all over the place, and this is movable fire. So a lot of different weird, strange actions going on here. And Mars, I haven't talked about Mars too much. Mars is in the sixth house here of enemies and acute problems. So this is again like more people going off the hook and doing strange, weird things. Okay, and Mars can represent, literally inflammation. It can represent accidents. It can represent violence, even. So we've got Sun and K2 in the fifth house, a fixed fire sign, K2 and Mars on the top here, in a movable fire sign. And then we've got K2, Mars, and Saturn in this dual fire sign in the ninth house. So this is going to be like, and that's that was the other thing, is when people were coming in last week, like everybody's like, oh, you can't believe what my boss did. You can't believe what my friend did. You can't believe what my brother did. You can't believe, it's like, I can, because I know what's going on in the sky. But the thing is, it was also dual. So most people were not having only one problem, like just at work or just at home, but it was like work and home. Everybody's like work and home. So there were problems that were both. So that's the dual nature of this. Again, Sagittarius in the ninth house, which is again where we're picking up the moon, right? Okay, so that's kind of how we're starting things at the beginning of the month. Then basically, when we look at the end of the month, so the second chart here on the right, September 30th, this is 19:11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, New York time. Again, we have Aries rising, so we're comparing natural zodiacs here. Then the moon is in the nakshatra, so it's still in Sagittarius, but now it's shifted to the next nakshatra of Purvashada. Purvashada is symbolized by a winnowing basket. So, like a basket, you've probably seen them. Like I've seen them in movies. Usually, it's women who are doing this. Like I guess men too. Sometimes, usually women. I think I see more. They put the wheat or something like that, like a grain in there, and they shuffle. You shake this thing, and then basically this basket, it starts to separate. Like the wheat, the edible part of the wheat from the husk, which is hard and can, cause griping and intestinal problems and stuff. So this is a sorting energy here. Okay, so the mind goes from like probably ending something or pulling up something by its roots, like like a bad weed. Like we're weeding here. Like how do we end this mess? How do we pull the plug up here? In the beginning of the month. And then it's like sorting through all this, like what exactly happened here? Like this just came out of the blue. This is like, once the smoke, the fire just died down, the smoke is cleared, and the ashes have settled. It's like, what happened here? Why did it happen here? How did it affect us? So there's a lot of mind and emotion sorting going on at the end of the month. Okay. And then you can see it's also reflected here in the dasha period, the planetary period, because now we're going Venus, Mercury, Moon, Mercury. Okay, so Mercury and Moon, these are the two mind planets. Moon, the emotional mind, and Mercury, the analytical mind. And then Venus is also an emotional planet. representing like heart and emotions. So you have the two mind planets, this is all like, and also Moon and Venus are also creativity, okay? So this is like, again, with the sorting, Purvashad energy, like sorting things out mentally and emotionally, like what exactly happened here? Okay. And then choosing to do things differently, maybe in new creative ways, rather than going back into old patterns. Okay. And let's see. So where is Venus at that? So now look. So now this fifth house, at the beginning of the month, it was Mercury, Sun, Ketu. So this like wildfire, bizarre, authoritative something going on. And we don't, again, you won't always exactly. And that's the thing is, especially when you get Ketu and Rahu energy, which are part of, what create eclipses, this will be like expect the unexpected, out of the blue, strange, bizarre, like never in my mind did I ever think this was going to go down. And then it happens. And then on the flip side, though, not to always be negative, but on the flip side, it can be like, never in my mind did I ever think things were going to be this good. So it's all about like sort of, I think the positive part of these eclipses and the energy they bring is that it's like, flipping your expectations, either good expectations or bad expectations on their head. And it's like, no, it's like keep an open mind here. Okay. So now in the fifth house, we've got Venus with Ketu. Okay. And at this point, I think they're both yes, Purva Falguni. So this is all about, creative solutions here, unusual creative solutions going on here. And that actually partly happened, like with one of my patients last week. I remember like, they were talking about they've been spending probably too much money on different things. They feel like sort of hoarding a little bit, and that kind of thing. Like they kind of have this tendency. So we're talking about the emotional reasons why they might be doing that, but one of the suggestions I gave them was actually to maybe watch some minimalist videos, like, minimalist lifestyle, because that's kind of a big thing. It's been that way for a few years now on YouTube, which would make sense here. So Venus, that's a pretty creative idea, only not the one you usually get when you go to the doctor's office with K2 technology. Okay, so this, and the fifth house again is advice. So this is creative technology advice, potentially. Okay. Yeah, and then again, where's Mercury? Mercury's down here in its own sign of Virgo in the sixth house. So Mercury and Virgo is all about like sorting and separating as well. So again, we're picking up that as well. Not only the sorting from the moon, because it's important to shadow, but the sorting because Mercury's in its own sign of dual Earth sign of Virgo, which is all about organizing and cleansing and clearing. So we're doing some, leadership here, leading sun leadership of cleansing and clearing the mind, sorting through action, the thoughts and decisions and words that have probably flared up, earlier in the month. Like again, this emotional fallout here. Okay. And then the moon we talked about. So you can see there's creative advice, there's clearing, cleansing the minds. And again, both the mind planets, Mercury and Moon, are in sorting energies. Got it? So yeah, so that's what's going on at the end of the month. So again, we've got some yogas, planetary combinations in the second chart as well. So Mongolic, so Mars is in seventh house. That creates a problem with relationships, which is not surprising. Considering what happened at the beginning of the month. Again, like what I mentioned, a lot of my these people complain were just like, that's it, I've had it, that was the last straw kind of energy. This is just, crazier than crazy type of stuff going on. We do have a Buddha Ditch yoga still here, so intelligence going on here. Spacery yoga is still happening. So again, this could be happening on like a network type of level, not just an individual, but a collective type of level. Related to boss, father, ninth house stuff, and siblings, neighbors, third house stuff. And then we have solar yogas as well. So it's the same solar yogas as in the first chart. So again, support of the sun, but again, probably, creative ideas coming through and creative speech, but, maybe some, again, innovative actions going on here as well. Okay. So yeah, so what do we have here? So this could lead potentially to like even some sort of new legal entity or identity. Okay, the reason why is that Mars is still aspecting the Lugna here, which is its own sign. So there's going to be power here. And again, that's also was like basically we had the two fire planets in fire signs, and they were both strong. I mean, Mars was strong in Aries because Mars was aspecting its own house. Sun was in its own sign, and Leo. So again, a lot of fighting going on. But now Mars has moved into the seventh house here of partnerships, spouse, and partnerships, and Jupiter's aspecting here. So this could be like creating a new legal, you know, partnerships here. Okay, to like straighten this out. Okay, this could be like new laws to, just put a lid on and contain all of this wild mess that was kind of happening and is happening now. It's still it's the beginning of the month now. To contain all this because it was just completely off the hook. Okay. Yeah, and this is going to be, let's see, affecting daily activity, right? Getting into some sort of, healthy routine. This is this Mercury and Virgo sorting things out, trying to, because again, it was Mars was in this sixth house here. Sixth house is daily routine. Mars is going to be an erratic energy. So it was like things were crazy. Now it's like, okay, let's try to, sweep things up and get things back in order. Um, and what else do we have here? This could also affect reputation. What else do we have here? Innovation. Again, there's still some fighting going on, but I think it's like, trying to find creative solutions to ameliorate or mitigate, all this like, off the hook wild stuff that was like out of control in the beginning of the month. And then again, processing the difficulties that have arisen. It's like, why did these problems flare up? How do we really, clean out the wound rather than just put a band-aid on it and say call it a day? It's like do the harder work of, diving deep and really, processing the mental space, emotional space. There might even be like almost like a uh, PTSD type of um, situation here. And even like when you have Rahu and Ketu Rahu and Ketu on their own can symbolize like mental health issues. Mercury is on the Rahu Ketu axis, so you can expect more weird, strange, unusual decisions, speech. And then Moon, you can see by the end of the week here, Moon is going to be here. So you're going to have the two mind planets on the Rahu Ketu axis. And you're going to have that again for both the first and the second eclipses coming up this month. So, strange and unusual things are going to happen. And again, we might get some real flare up of, psychological issues and stuff like that. So, take a breath and, just be gentle with yourself and others this month if you can. But it might be that, again, some more formal boundaries might need to put in place to, keep things from, again, boiling over like they seem to be doing in the beginning of the month. Okay, so it's general energy for the month. Let's take a look at planets now and see what we see. And then, as I mentioned, I intersperse some famous charts, so we'll take a look at those. And the famous charts I choose are ones that are similar to the current sky pattern. So they kind of are an example of how these energies can manifest, on the material plane for us. Like last month, was one of the charts I looked at was the burning of Washington, D.C., which happened in 1814. The British invaded Washington, D.C. and burned down like the Capitol and the what was it, the other White House and well, it wasn't the White House, but the president's residence and this. Um, and it's kind of interesting that like now U.S. President Trump has basically brought in all these troops, the National Guard, to basically take over the city. And because I guess his claim is that there's too much crime or something. So it wasn't. So we are having this sort of like scale or a sort of escalation of military presence in Washington D.C. um, similar to what happened in 1814. So, but it's not by an outside presence, it's by our own presence. So, again, similarities, again, not exactly the same, but similarities. So, yeah. So we'll see. Let's see what this month brings. Okay, so on this slide, we're looking at Sun and Mars. So again, these are the two fire planets. These are the two leadership planets, and these are the ones that are not just fiery on themselves, but like, levels and levels, of multiple fires going on. Because the sun is in its own sign and Mars is aspecting, fire signs, so it's been kind of wild. So September 3rd, Mars enters Chitra Nakshatra. So Chitra is the symbol of that is a gemstone. So this can literally be some sort of structure like architecture, and Mars represents, land and buildings. Okay, and Mars again is a erratic, rebellious, can be, fighting, can be, what is it? Like a even violent type of planet. And it's in Virgo, where it doesn't, tend to behave itself very well. So this might be, and Chitra is in, that's in Virgo. So Virgo is a dual Earth sign. So this could be like two different, entities, like two different buildings or something. That it can be being built and or destroyed because Saturn is aspecting here, and Saturn's the other um, planet representing property and land. Okay, so and so there's building something new, innovative potentially, but also potentially destroying things as well. Is what we got going here, like physical structures of things. Chitra literally can also be like luxury goods and stuff like that. So there might be some of that going on. Like I did when I did the birth chart of Bangkok and Thailand. Ketu was in Chitra in the sixth house, if I remember correctly. And so Ketu again has this hidden unexpected quality, and Chitra can literally be a gemstone. And one of the things I was reading, and it's in the sixth house of acute problems and issues. So this could be like, at least when K2's in Chitra, it could be like a false or fake gemstone, that type of thing. And apparently in Bangkok, that's one of the biggest thrift scams that happens is like jewelry that's like really overpriced and not really worth what it's. Yeah. So anyway, so it looks like we've got some building and destruction of properties, multiple properties going on here. Or other, structures of things or value of things. You could put it that way. Then September 10th, Sun crosses K2. So this is, again, authority out of control, comfort zone, explosive, bizarre power dynamic. So we're not quite out of out of this energy here. Even after, and then again, this is just a few days after the eclipse, which again, there's going to be even more of this, unusual, unexpected, expect the unexpected type of energy that happens with all eclipses. Then 13th of September, Sun enters Uttar Falguni Nakshatra. So this may be, again, there's some creative energy here. Again, there can be some misuse of power going on here. But there's some sort of goal in addition to being creative. So not just for enjoyment's sake or hedonistic purposes, but there's some sort of goal going on here. Okay. Again, hopefully, you know, more positive than not, but it's probably a little bit probably not what most people would want. But you never know, because the thing is, again, the K2 energy, like maybe it could go the other way too, where the sun, the authority, maybe this is a boss you typically have problems with, and then one day suddenly they're being nice to you, or they give you a birthday card or something, and you're like, "Whoa, where did this come from?" Because you're expecting the negative behavior. So it can go both ways, But somebody who's like stepping out of their usual mo is what you could see here. Okay, then. September 16th, Sun enters Virgo or Kanya, so this is samkranti. Again, I have a whole video on how to work with samkranti energy. But this is an authority maybe getting divided and or organized, because again, it's in Virgo, a dual Earth sign. So there's a sorting energy, and the two fire planets, Sun and Mars, are in Virgo. So this could be like separating authority or organizing authority, or even military authority can be, physical authority, because Mars is more of a physical type of planet. Then September 19th, Mars enters Libra to Law. So again, this could be, and Libra is like a marketplace. So this could be innovation or competition in a marketplace. Because again, fiery planets like Sun and Mars, especially when they're together, and or with K2, this can be like a competition type stuff. 21st of September, Sun has an exact mutual aspect with Saturn. So there's going to be some delays, obstacles, restructuring going on with power, career, purpose, soul. Again, this is all kind of boiling over, but then again, and again in an unexpected way, because it's happening simultaneously with a solar eclipse at the end of the month, or towards the end of the month, September 21st. So this could be a division here. So one government or one authority becomes two, because there's separation here potentially, because these folks are going in different directions here. So a big shift in authority, father, health. This could also be pain and nervous system type stuff, because by the time, because when Sun and Mercury are in Virgo and they're directly opposed to Saturn, those are all nervous system related planets. So Sun is central nervous system, Mercury's peripheral nervous system, and then Saturn is neuromuscular. So especially when you get these all together, you can get like pain, and especially like probably bilateral pain, or two different kinds of pain, because it's going to be in the two dual signs of Virgo, dual earth sign, and Pisces, a dual water sign. So again, it's not just going to be one, hit here. It's going to be two. And also, around this time, this could be related to the hand, because Hasta Nakshatra, these planets are moving through, some of these planets are moving through Hasta Nakshatra, which is symbolized by hand. Okay. Or at least I think Mercury at that time, I believe, is in the Hasta Nakshatra. I have to check on the next slide. And then September 23rd, Mars enters Swati Nakshatra. So this could be fragile beginnings. This could also be like starting an education. Swati's symbol of that is new grown grass blowing in the wind. It's related to education and that sort of thing. There can be a lot of like nervous energy associated with Swati, because it's like just, newborn grass. So this isn't established here. So this might be like nervousness or anxiety related to starting something new, or new education, that sort of thing. Then the Sun enters Hasta Nakshatra, again, that hand nakshatra, on September 26th. So this is when authority is like taking control and really sorting things out. They're starting to, but this is when they really kind of step into that. Okay, so there you go. Let's see. I think I have a chart on the next slide. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, I do have a famous birth chart here. So this chart is for the Russian beer tax of 1698. Which probably sounds a bit weird or bizarre, and there's reasons why. Kind of like what I was talking about. There are actually a lot of similarities with this chart and the current sky pattern. So again, this could be like, authority is kind of doing a little bit wild and weird stuff. Okay. So let's just take a look at it here. So this chart is set for September 5th, 1698. I don't have a birth time, so I set this as a sun rising chart. So it's a Surya Lugna in Moscow, Russia. Okay. The Lugna Nakshatra, I don't know, because I don't have an exact birth time. Sun Nakshatra is in Purva Falguni. So again, that hammock, marital bed type energy. So there's enjoyment, finer things of life, luxury type energy here. And the sun is the president or king, or in this case, the emperor, Tsar. Okay. Tsar Peter was in charge at this point. So the moon nakshatra for most of the day was an Uttar Falguni, which is again that hammock or marital bed, enjoyment, finer things of life, but with a goal or purpose, okay? And the moon was in this nakshatra until 23:06 p.m. So this was probably, the moon was probably here, okay? Even if the chart was a little bit different. So there's enjoyment, but with a purpose, okay? Then the day lord, so it was either Jupiter or Venus, depending on the time of the day, when the sun rose. And so these are both advice counseling planets. So there's some advice going on here in terms of goals and luxuries and stuff like that. For our Lord or our Lord, we don't know, because there's no exact birth time. Birth dasha, again, was probably sun, because moon was in Uttar Falguni most of the day, and sun rules that nakshatra. So again, we're getting leadership energy here, okay, at the top level. So how is this chart similar to the current sky pattern? Well, we've got Sun, Swa, and Leo. So Swa means planets in its own sign. So it's a very strong sun. We have Mercury in Virgo, which it will be at the end of the month. So again, this is that sorting, cleansing type energy, and that's going on in the second house. Okay. And that's related to assets, but it's also related to family, inner circle, and the second house represents physically like the lower half of the face and the neck. Okay, so you see where we're going already. Like this is a beard tax. So cleaning the lower face and the neck. Okay, and assets going on here. And you can see we've got Mercury moon on the Rahu Ketu axis. Okay, the second house also represents speech. So this is some announcement, some weird announcement, okay, about, how to clean the face and the neck. Okay, that's ambitious because Rahu is here. Rahu, bizarreness is going to come from Rahu, and ambition is going to come from. So there's some ambition, ambitious, weird, thoughts, or statement going on, speech going on here, related to how to clean the lower face and neck. Then we have there was a lunar eclipse that happened not too long after this, on the 25th of September, and you can see that the sun is coming closer to Rahu, and Rahu is retrograding closer to the sun. So basically, in what is it, 2 weeks from this chart time, there's going to be a lunar eclipse going on, and that's true. The other thing is that instead of having Ketu 5-9 aspects, you have Rahu 5-9 aspects. So again, you're going to bring this sudden, weird, bizarre energy to more of the chart, but there's more ambition than Ketu. Ketu's more of like a, forget it, cut things off, cut your losses and move on type of energy. Rahu's like a driving things forward type of energy. Okay. So, yeah, that's kind of what we're stressing. But yeah, it's actually pretty interesting, this chart. So let's take a look a little bit more. So we've got Leo again, or Sun and Leo in the top here, and the Lugna and the rising sign ascendant. Fixed fire sign. This is like a leader who's not going to stop. On like a leader on fire, very active and won't back down type of thing. So there's going to be strength here and power, but like this is going to be an unrelenting leader. And again, we're looking at what's a Purva Falguni here. So luxuries, finer things. Also, I would say aesthetics here, because Purva Falguni, the star, that's in the star of Venus. So you're going to get more of the luxury aspect, because Venus represents luxuries, but it also represents aesthetics and beauty. And so we're basically kind of combining that right with this bear text. So, and also creativity here. So this is like going to be an unusual, like creative type of leader here. Okay. And also you can see like a Russian beer tax. I mean, I've never heard of it. And apparently this happened in Russia, and then it might have happened in England. There's rumors of it happening in England around the time of Henry VIII, but there's no documentation of it. And it did also happen in France at the time of Francis I. The Pope approved a beer tax on priests to fund the wars. And then also there was a beer tax in Yemen in 1936. And so what they did was they taxed men for not having a beard. So it can work either way. Okay. But you can see this is like a kind of a weird, strange law that's happened occasionally a few times in world history, as far as we know. And this is one of those bizarre times. And so you can see, like, already, this is sort of this, like, bizarre, use or misuse potentially of power. So that's kind of what we're dealing with at the current time. So the yogas that we have in this chart, well, we also, besides having this sun in its own sign, which is going to be a lot of firepower, okay, and potentially force, this creates, we also have a Ruchika yoga here. We have Mars in its own sign in the fourth house. So Mars, again, is another fire planet. So we have two fire planets, like, really active, really strong. So that alone is going to be a really strong leadership and authority, but almost like violence as well, potentially, when you get, fire planets that strong. We do have a Parvata yoga, so that's going to bring leadership, energy. Mongolic, so Mars in the fourth house, that's going to bring problems with the relationships, especially at home. Okay, because this was not a popular tax that happened here. Okay. There's all kinds of pushback, and that's why it only lasted like less than 100 years. I guess Catherine the Great, abolished the law. But it stuck for a while. Then we have a Lakshmi yoga, so that's a big wealth yoga here. So again, there's a lot going on here about power and wealth and finer things. So what happened? The backstory here is that Tsar Peter did a tour of Europe, and one of the things he noticed, obviously, was that there was a new fad or trend for men to shave, do a clean shave or whatever. And he saw that as like a symbol of like modernization and wealth. And I guess, he was getting this, what is it, a FOMO, fear of missing out, type of energy going on. So he decided to bring that back to Russia and like modernize Russia in a very obvious way by forcing men essentially to shave. And so what they could do is that if they wanted to keep their beard, they would have to pay money. So what happened is they would go pay their money and they would get a token and they'd have to carry this token around. And apparently, if police caught you, the police had the authority to shave you in public. You didn't have your token. The other thing that was bizarre about this, I mean, just imagine, okay? So then also the bizarre thing is that the way that he introduced this whole thing, the whole idea is that apparently he came back, he had recently come back from Europe, and there was some like coming home party for him with his like higher echelon, his like, I think, defense minister and, whatever, cabinet members or some, similar type of, high level authorities or whatever. And he basically took out like a barber's knife and started shaving his cabinet like during this party. So it was really kind of like, is this like really, I'm sure they were like, is this really happening? Has he lost his mind? Kind of what is going on here? So yeah, okay. So we've got that going on. So anyway, that's the backstory, and this is the chart basically for that time when this all kind of burst forward, which you can see there's this, this tension building with this lunar eclipse that's coming at the end of September. 1698. So we have a Ruchika, so that's going to bring power through Mars, a very physical, military, violent type of, physical actions. And Mars with Jupiter, that's law even. Law, that's, and again, there's a lot of instability here in this chart because Moon is at 4 degrees 4 minutes. Venus is at 12 minutes. Mars is at 16 minutes. And actually, these three planets, Moon and Venus and Mars, all shifted earlier in the day. When did they shift? They shifted between 2:19 a.m. and 7:52 a.m. in the morning. Okay, so again, Moon and Venus are the two aesthetic planets, but also emotional planets. Moon is the emotional mind, but it's with Mercury, the analytical mind, that's split in this dual Earth sign Virgo, with Rahu, ambitious, strange, bizarre, speech because it's in the second house. But you can see how all these change, and then Mars as well. So, unstable actions, unstable aesthetics, unstable emotions. Like, I'm sure people thought, like, this is just wild and crazy stuff, and like, wow, if this is what he's going to do, what's he going to do next? So, yeah, there is actually a Srinanth yoga in here as well. So there's some spirituality. And the reason I think why the spirituality energy is coming through is that there at that time there was a lot of pushback from the church because wearing a beard was also it had religious implications as well. So he was not popular with the public and was not popular with the clergy and the church at that time. Uh, and you can see there is a pravraja yoga here. There's a focus up here in the second house of, again, speech, assets, physicality, lower face, neck, cleaning that up, in public. Moon is public. Mercury, again, in the hasta nakshatra, physically taking control, ambitious control of assets and lower face and neck. I mean, you could see it that way. Speech, even, talking about that. So yeah, power, leadership, problem relationships. These are the things that these yogas give. Spirituality, focus, but also being unpopular. And again, these two planets being so strong, Sun in its own sign, Mars in its own sign. This is going to be leadership, but aggression and competition. So this is Sarpir coming back and saying, "Oh, we need to like outdo, the Europeans or whatever. Start shaving people to public." I don't know. This is very strange. Um, So, yes, and again, these three planets changing within a few hours of each other on the same day, Mars, Moon, and Venus, is going to bring even more instability to something that's already pretty clearly wild and weird. So the second house lord is a Swam, Mercury, and Rahu. Both of these are in hostile, that hand, which can bring this like literally controlling gravity type of energy. A dark moon, so very unsettling emotional times. Uttara Falguni, like so creative with a purpose, but like to take this ambitious control of people's, um, hygiene essentially. And again, it's in a dual earth sign, so this is like a bilateral cleansing. I guess they could have. I guess people can do that. Most people don't like shave half your beard, or I don't know. You could create design. Some people do that, right? Or so anyway. But again, taking control of finances, ambition. There's clearly some mental health, wild outbursts going on here, both, I'm sure, by Tsar Peter as well as his cabinet. I'm sure they thought, they were not happy with this. I believe this could also demonstrate loss of public support. Okay, because people were not, layperson was not happy with this. The third house, we have a Swa, Venus, and Chitra. So again, structure, Venus. So Venus is again structure of aesthetics. How do you present yourself? Especially we're in the third house now, so this is non-verbal communication. And Venus is here in its own sign, which is going to be strong, but Saturn is aspecting here as well, where it's exalted. So this is a very strong third house, but this is non-verbal communication of how to structure in physical ways your aesthetics and your beauty. Yeah. Yeah, so that's what's going on here. And the way people express themselves in physical ways. Great creative attractiveness. And again, this is on a daily basis, like routine, like your daily shaving routine is being changed here because of this long. Then this bizarre law. So then the fourth house lord is a Swa, Mars, so very strong, Jupiter, and Vishaka. So these two planets are both of them in Vishaka? Yeah, both of them are in Vishaka. Vishaka is like victory at all costs. So this is a very aggressive, like physical, military, almost violent type of law, home law, and also daily law, because this Mars and Jupiter are in the fourth house of home, but um, they're aspecting the 10th house of day-to-day activity. So yeah, pretty wild stuff. So victory at all costs, law, home, and heritage. So again, the fourth house also not only represents home, but this is like lineage. And this is again, Jupiter represents spiritual. So this is why they got pushback from the religious authorities at the time. And then the fifth house lord was Jupiter. So his advice regarding loss, because Jupiter's gone 12 houses away, so this is advice about loss regarding such loss. So again, there's losses going on, major losses going on here because this was implemented. Like, again, a lot of pushback. Um, and also, this is why the law didn't stick. It stuck around for a while, but it didn't stick because they didn't even know how to implement this. Like, are you really going to start shaving people, whatever, in public, and at what level? Like they don't have enough to do. Like now, the police or authorities are becoming barbers in this. I don't know. It was very strange. So they had problems implementing this besides the mostly cultural and religious implications. Then the sixth house here, Lord is Saturn. It's in its own sign, retrograde, very strong, traditional daily activity, problems and obstacles here. But Rahu is aspecting here as well. So this ambitious pushback by traditional partners. So this is like the clergy in the church saying, no, we're not going to follow this Russian beer tax law. And the thing is, there was a problem because I think the priests in the cities had access to more money or generally were wealthier, so they could afford the tax, so they could keep their beards. But priests and religious authorities in the countryside couldn't afford this, so they had to shave. And so there's this physical kind of stratification of power and wealth because people who could afford the tax and keep their beard versus people who couldn't. That was going on as well. So yeah, so wild stuff. So what else? Seventh house Lord is in Saturn, so acute problems with relationships, and it's aspected by Sun, Mars, and Jupiter. So there's a fight over ideology here. This is Aquarius, so this is like fixed ideas. There is a fight, legal fight over ideology here. Eighth house Lord is Jupiter. It's aspected by what? Ketu's there in Revati. So this could be like, weird ideas about foreign travel, which is what he came, back from before he announced this strange idea. And it's the eighth house here. This is also deep psychology aspected by Mercury, Moon, and Saturn. So this is like, you know, um, strange taking ideas from travels overseas, but it's not really well thought through because Mercury's debilitated in Pisces here. And, there might be some obsession or concern about being too different and too traditional and like not in line or not modern enough like Europe. And that's what, caused this whole thing. I mean, if he had any like, kind of common sense or rationality left, yeah, I mean, I don't think even if he thought this was a good idea on some level, he didn't think it through very well because he couldn't really implement it. But this is like getting some weird ideas traveling again. This is like a FOMO type of energy. Like, oh, we got to keep, in these competitive planets, Sun, Swan, Mars, Sun. Like, we got to keep up with the Joneses. The Joneses being like the next continent of the countries, to the east or to the west, Russia. So yeah, it was a pretty wild time. And the ninth house lord is Mars, and it's aspected by Venus. So this could be like administering, or controlling administration of personal aesthetics and self-expression through non-physical means or non-verbal means. And this could also be again the clergy fighting here. I'm not very happy. The tenth house lord is Venus. It's aspected by Rahu, Mars, and Jupiter again. Implementation of an ambitious law here. 11th house lord is Mercury, aspected by Mars. Hostile groups, very divided ideas, dividing people based on these ideas. The 12th house lord is Moon, and it's aspected by Jupiter and Saturn. So this could be like talking about, how do I say, like Moon. So this is like at the reception that happened, talking to inner circle about the losses that they're seeing to the country of Russia, through their overseas travel through Europe. So it's like, oh, when I went to Europe, they were doing this and all innovative and da 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 da. And, like we got to catch up and move forward. So let's cut everybody's beards off, even though it was kind of a superficial move. So yeah. So yeah, and again, this has happened occasionally through world history in other countries, but it's kind of a lark, it's kind of a strange, unusual situation. But you can see again, the reason why I chose this chart is you can see how these energies, are probably playing out in our current time and world at this point. Okay, so on this slide, we're going to talk about Mercury or Buddha and Venus chakra and their transits for September. So September 3rd, Venus enters Exaltation Nakshatra, which is symbolized by a snake. So there can be like a lot of attention towards, love, relations, attraction, also healing maybe, potentially. Because Venus is a natural benefic, so you might get the more positive aspects of this snake-like energy, which can be biting and hissing, but it can be more healing, especially since Venus is more of a diplomatic type of planet. So you might get some healing of some of the strange things that have been going on. But again, we still have the eclipse coming, so it's yeah. Then the September 6th, Mercury enters Purva Falguni Nakshatra, so there can be unusual leadership talk because Sun and Ketu are going to be there. Unusual leadership talk regarding decisions, creativity, luxuries, that sort of thing. Yeah. Then September 11th, Mercury crosses Ketu. This can be a sudden, unexpected shift, especially related to Mercury related things. So, speech, decisions, thoughts, just out of the blue, like, maybe cutting things off because that's more of a Ketu type of energy. Um, and this could be like a separation of some kind. Then Ketu, 13th of September, Mercury enters Uttra Falguni Nakshatra. So, the above stuff going on, some sort of creative talks and stuff like that may be strange, but there's going to be like some goal or objective related to it, not just like for fun or enjoyment's sake on its own. Then September 14th, Venus enters Leo or Simha and also Maga Nakshatra at the same time. So this could be a big shift in relations and diplomacy, also performing arts, I would say, because it's all happening in Leo. Leo is related to a stage. So we can see some big developments. And then I think about this time, right? Not yet, but Sun's going to move out of there. Mercury's going to move out of there. So, yeah. So here we go. So the next day. So Mercury is leaving Leo and entering Virgo. So this is going to be like a cleaning, sorting, Marie Kondo, like sorting and cleansing and practical details, both the mind space, maybe even meditation. When I see Mercury in its own sign, I usually see people interested in meditation or Buddhism, so that might be a thing for some people. Trying to seek some peace and, again, organization after all this chaotic mess that's kind of started the month. Then September 17th, Mercury's in exact mutual aspect with Saturn. So restructuring these thoughts, restructuring the way people talk, communication, like setting boundaries potentially. That might be something. September 20th, Mercury enters Hasta Nakshatra. So again, this is getting control over the mind space, mental control over changes that have happened. This could also potentially be somebody getting interested in astrology or palmistry, because Hasta can be related to that. And Mercury can as well. So especially when you have Mercury in Hasta, that might be somebody getting, starting to. And again, also was it Mars is going into Swanti energy. So again, the new innovation in education might be like starting to learn astrology or palmistry, that sort of thing. Then September 25th, Venus enters Purva Falguni Nakshatra. This might be an unusual boost in creativity and enjoyment because, again, this is a creativity nakshatra with the planet of creativity, and then Ketu's there, so this is going to be an unusual twist to all this. So, again, this might be like enjoying the peace, and the organization after this really wild, chaotic time. Then 28th of September, Mercury enters Chitra Nakshatra. So this is like restructuring the mind, getting some organization to the mind and the decisions and the speech and that sort of thing. Education potentially as well. friendships. Like, again, if things have really gone offline here in the beginning of the month, this might be, again, trying to restore what can be restored, even though I'm not sure all of it can be restored. But you can see how the energy is shifting in that direction towards the end of the month with Mercury and Venus. Okay, so here's another famous moment in time. This is when the David statue, famous Italian Renaissance statue of David, it was unveiled in Florence, Italy. So, and this, kind of because of the current, again, we have a lot of planets traveling through Purva Falguni, Uttar Falguni. So there's also going to be a boost in creativity, which again, we'll see in this chart. We've got one, two, three, four, 5 planets in either Purva or Uttar Falguni, so there's going to be a lot of creativity here. So the unveiling of the statue happened September 8th, 1504. I don't have a birth time, but in Florence, Italy. So this is a Surya Lagna sun rising chart. Lagna Nakshatra, I don't know. Sun and moon are both in Uttar Falguni, so creativity, purpose, leadership, public mind, emotions. So yeah, I didn't know the backstory. I've actually seen the statue of David in person, but I didn't know the backstory. So part of the reason, and we'll see it in this chart actually, part of the reason why the statue was created was as a response to the expulsion of the Medicis from Italian authority. So it was kind of a new day, and the statue was a sign of rebellion. And as I talk about it, it was kind of funny because what I do with these charts is I go through and I pull out the energy that I can, and then I kind of check myself by usually checking Wikipedia or something like that to make sure I'm not too far off. And actually, it was pretty right on because I was like, "There's a lot of fighting going. There's a lot of fighting going on here in this chart. Um, a lot of hostility in this chart. So yeah, we'll talk about it. But so the day lord was either Sun or Saturn, depending on the time of the day. I don't really know. Either, again, Sun will bring leadership, Saturn will bring tradition, and the Ra Lord, our Lord, I don't know. Birth dasha was probably the Sun if it was unveiled before 7:21 p.m., which I'm guessing this was unveiled during the day, and I don't know what time the sun set in Italy or Florence at that time, but that was probably around, I'm guessing, sunset time. So it's probably sun. So again, there's a lot of leadership, but also mastery. With sun, you also get mastery. You also get purpose with sun, okay, and soul. So how does this chart recreate the current sky pattern? Well, you have K2, Venus, and Mercury in Leo. And actually you have the sun as well because you have a parivartan exchange of houses between Mercury and Sun. So you have Sun all over this chart and back in Leo. So you have and again, you're going to get this strange, unusual leadership energy going on here. Several times over. So, yeah, and then you have Mercury in Virgo. So, yeah. Then Sun and Mercury in Virgo is the same. Mars is in Libra at this point. I think it's in Chitra at this time. And also, you can see that on this, now we're coming out of an eclipse. So there was an eclipse on August 25th, 1504. So, yeah, this is what, 10 days out or so? 8, 5, yeah, like 8, 5, or a couple weeks out after an eclipse. So this is post-eclipse. So the previous beard tax chart was pre-eclipse, and this is post-eclipse. So there's going to be a lot of weird, strange energy associated with this. And there's a lot of weird, strange stories with the statue of David. So, yeah, so let's look at it, just for kicks here. So the Lugna here, Virgo, Kanya, this is a dual earth sign. So Dosvabhava Prithvi. So immediately I'm thinking 2 earths, 2 physical structures, okay? So in my mind, again, I don't know the backstory yet. When I was like, there must be like a second statue or a replacement statue, or there's like maybe the statue's made out of 2 pieces of marble or something like that, okay? So this is what happens. So we have this new moon and sun, okay, and Swan Mercury, imagine that, with the Parivartana here. all in Purva Falguni. So this is all this like, is that all in Purva Falguni? I think that was, oh no, Mercury's in Purva Falguni, Moon and Sun are in Uttar Falguni. So in all this creative energy with Mercury, Moon, Sun, so the mind, the emotions of leadership, okay? So there's this public statue to, again, like sort of symbolize rebellion to the old ways and support the new leadership, okay? Um, and the thing is, because of this exchange with Sun and Mercury, like this, you can see that this dual Earth thing, this Virgo thing, was created in an isolated place, 12 houses, isolated places, and then brought forward at this time. So this is an unveiling of this statue that was worked on. I think he worked on it for like 2 or 3 years. He got the commission, I think 2 or 3 years before, like in 1501 or 1502 or something. So he's working on this thing and he's finding like, ta-da, here it is, okay? So, and then Mercury in Virgo, this is going to be detail oriented, a master of detail oriented, emotional, logical expression, but by two. So I kept wondering what this by two is. Okay, there's a duality here. This is a dual earth sign. So I was like, what's the story here? So this is the story. So the duality comes from, so the statue was unveiled in 1504, and then apparently in 1525, okay, they were going to create a second statue. They were going to create a second statue. So they had a block of marble that they were bringing on a boat down the Arno River, and then the piece of marble fell into the Arno River and was lost, okay? And so this second block of marble was intended to be what they call a pendant, which is like its pair. So what they traditionally did was they created like, here's a statue that kind of told one side of the story and the other side of the story, or somehow continued the story or something. So there was an intended second match. So there were actually 2 statues that were supposed to be built, not exactly at the same time, but successively. And the second big thing of marble dropped into the Arno River and was lost. So there is actually there is the potential of a second statue, but it's underwater in the Arno River. I don't know if they ever got it out. It might still be there. I don't know. But I was like, no way. Because I was like, okay, there must be a second physical structure or something, or maybe they had it in 2 different places, or I don't know. I was like, there's got to be and so there's a second one underwater in the Arno. Okay, there you go. So again, sometimes these things are so like specific, oddly specific, that you're like, wow, like you just kind of like, wow, that's pretty amazing. So as an astrologer, that's how I get. So anyway, the second house here, the Lord is Venus, and then Mars is there in Chitra. So again, a physical structure of Earth. Physical structure of Earth, meaning a statue, like marble, right? And Venus here has gone to the 12th house of losses, but also international trade. So, and like isolated places, but also like this basically went global, is what I'm seeing here. Especially when you get this Mercury and Sun, in Parivartana, there's going to be protection here of this 12th house. Okay, so this is going to be a structure, a physical structure, a beautiful, valuable physical structure that's going to be internationally known, essentially is what you're getting here, okay? And that they're talking about, okay? So then the third house here, the Lord is Mars, which, again, is this, in the second house here, and it's aspected by Jupiter and Ashlesha. So Jupiter is publishing, and the third house is nonverbal communication. So this is like news, okay? And Ashlesha is that snake energy catching attention. So there's a lot. This is going to be something that's always in the news. Was at the time. It was very controversial. A lot of people involved. Like there was a bunch of people, I don't know, something like 30 people, I think, that were involved in just deciding where to put this thing, But then there were all these different, like, stories related. It was always in the news for various reasons. Like apparently there was a bunch of artists tried to attack the statue because they were, I guess, jealous of Michelangelo, who created this statue, because they didn't get the commission. And then there was a time, when was it, 1991 even, that somebody, I don't know if they were unhinged mentally or whatever, but they had a chisel or whatever, and they started like striking. They broke off a part of the statue's toe. They basically vandalized the statue, and that vandalization happened several times over. So not only at the time that this was unveiled back in 1504, but we had people vandalizing this thing in 1991, like whatever, almost 500 years later. you know there's a lot of, like, again, with this very strong sun energy, um, and Mercury, there's a lot of friction here between uh, maintaining things in a controlled order way, and then this off the hook, out of bounds, strange authoritative actions that are being taken. And again, this is. And even there was like, even, was it recently? At some point, relatively recently, I don't know if I put the date in, but even recently, I think in the last 20 or 50 years, there were different people arguing about who owned the statue and who had authoritative rights over it. And so, like, it's just a very controversial type of, piece of art, a very controversial structure. So it was criticized and brought attention in the news multiple times over. The fourth house lord is Jupiter. So again, this is going to bring attention to home. This is basically going to make Florence famous. But also, like, I would say problems, like behind the scenes, I would say here, like multiple problems behind the scenes. Okay. Then the fifth lord here is Saturn. It aspects his own sign, is going to make it strong. Mars is aspecting here, which is exalted. And then you have Jupiter, which is debilitated. So this is going to be a master architect engineer of Earth statue. So this is a masterpiece. This is where you're getting the mass. Like, the way that he created this was a master. I think there was even, like, I was trying to read it, but I didn't really understand all of it. But apparently, like, he didn't use flat chisels at all, which is, like, really tough to do. And he was a pretty young guy. I think he was, like, in his 20s when he created this, masterpiece. So very gifted individual. But yeah, this is a master worker in creating beautiful, valuable pieces of statues and work. But the problem is Jupiter's debilitated. So it's going to be controversial. And again, there's going to be a lot of unlawful activity, like this vandalization that's happened again through the 500 years or so that this thing's been around. And protests and all this sort of thing, yeah. So also, there's going to be controversy with, the partners, home partners and stuff like that. So yeah, this is all true. Okay. So then the sixth house here, the Lord is Saturn, and it's bhavam Saturn. Yeah. So so the Lord of the sixth house is gone 6 houses away. This is a bhavam Saturn. This means, and the sixth house is troubles, acute problems. So this is going to be one problem after the other. So not only is there all this fire energy, but then there's this, like, recurring energy of problems that keeps cropping up. And Rahu is there. Rahu's in Purva Bhadrapada. Purva Bhadrapada is like the funeral pyre energy. So destruction, flame, smoke. So very ambitious enemies who are probably artists, because again, it's Venus and Mercury are aspecting the sixth house, and Sun as well. So ambitious artists are, striking at the structure and criticizing him, and all this kind of crazy stuff was going on. And again, these are, like, also probably political as well. I didn't read so much about that, but I'm guessing it, because again, this is ideology. This is Aquarius in the sixth house. So there's ambitious, unusual destruction of ideology going on here. And part of that was part of the statue. Like the statue itself was a symbol of rebellion to the previous ways or the current establishment or the previous establishment. And then that was also the reception, of enemies of Michelangelo. Right? So you can see it on two levels because, again, we've got a dual earth sign in the rising sign here. So you're going to see everything that happens in this chart is going to be multiplied, dual. So then the seventh house here, the Lord is Jupiter. It's aspecting its own. So there's going to be protection here of partners. And you have Sun, Moon, and Mercury. So there's going to be mixed thoughts and feelings here because this is a dual, water sign. Some protection, but again, mixed emotions for people. Ideas and not just emotions, but ideas and emotions. Then the eighth house here, the Lord is Mars, aspecting its own. So this is, again, by itself, very fiery, rebellious type of energy mindset, and the eighth house's mindset related to this. And Saturn is aspecting here, and Saturn's debilitated. So this is, again, the deep thought process to creating this with some valuable, beautiful physical structure that was rebellious and celebrating the demise of the previous authorities. Bureaucracy. Right? Then what do we have? Then eighth and ninth. Innovation, rebellious, what are right here? Breaking tradition, alternative mind, also esoterica. That was probably part of it. I didn't read about that, but it's probably part of it. Then the ninth house lord is Venus. It's aspected by Mars. This is fighting authority. We're fighting authority of the art and creativity. So, I did write the date down. So in 2010, not too long ago, 15 years ago, they were fighting over who actually owned the rights to the statue and who could make decisions about it. And so they're still fighting over this. Then the 10th house lord is Mercury. This could be like loss of work, loss of reputation, loss of ideas, division of ideas. Because again, you have a dual sign as the ascendant. So the all four of the kingdoms, all four of the central houses here are going to be dual. So it's going to have a very mixed, conflicting energy potentially. So yeah, and then what is it? The 11th house lord is Moon. And then we have an exalted Jupiter, but it's in installation, and bhavam Saturn. So again, gaining much public attention, making Florence famous. But there's gonna be a multitude of problems and injuries, like the vandalism, and probably for him as well. I mean, I'm guessing, with him smacking, this hard rock for years with these sharp tools, I'm sure he injured himself, with either cuts or, arthritis. Probably set himself up for some arthritis. Then the 12th house here, 12th house lord, Swa, Sun, Venus, K2, Mercury, unusual, isolated, global artist, master of detail, beauty, attraction, high art, all these things that are true. So yeah, actually this parivartana between 1st and 12th house helps a lot. But you can see how, depending on which planets you're running, because after Sun period, if assuming we start off in the Sun is the birth of Shah, then Sun, then Moon. Then after the Moon is Mars and Rahu. So you can see, like, depending on which planet, it can be better or worse, for this whole enterprise here. So yeah, so the statue is created by Michelangelo. It's considered to be a masterpiece and also set a precedent. So the other thing is, this was not only rebellious in terms of the political messaging associated with it, and actually even but it was also creatively and artistically. Like, even the way he depicted David, which I never knew, but apparently, because he seemed pretty relaxed to me from what I recall, but apparently he shows a time when David was getting ready to go into battle as a warrior. And I was like, whoa, because usually, like, uh, the way I had it in my mind, and they said they actually wrote this, is that, usually warriors are always depicted as like in their armor and very strong and like, like I'm gonna get you to, not like sort of in repose, sort of like invulnerable as like a nude statue and sort of like sexy too. Like that's kind of, I had no idea. Again, like I had no idea. And when I was reading this, I was like, wow, I wish I kind of knew this. I probably would have appreciated, the like the sort of kind of rebellion in the creative direction of classical statues that were built in like Greece and Rome, Greece and Italy, So so there's that, and then actually they had a bunch of, because they knew they needed to protect it because there were all these people protesting this statue, that they actually had these guards lined up around the statue to protect it. Again, this Mercury, like, literally trying to keep things controlled, this out of control, creative leadership, coming out of the blue. Because the 12th house, so the 6th house is enemies, but the 12th house is hidden enemies. So these like random people and artists who, I don't know, had various issues with the statue. Again, even 500 years later, which I thought was really like, wow, okay. Um, and they had to protect it, not just from these other vandals, but then, like, during the World War, I guess what they did was they buried the statue in sand and then barricaded it, bricked it in, so to protect it from bombs or whatever else was going on at the time. So yeah, very strange. So yeah, so even this, like, at the top here, this like Mercury, because again, Mercury's going to be in the top because of the Vartan exchange of houses with Sun. So you have Mercury, Moon, Sun. This is going to be like a like a physical structure that's going to divide people's minds and emotions. People are going to have mixed feelings and thoughts about this masterpiece here. And there was even, like, on a deeper level, this what they called a Neoplatonic idea that, like, the mind and body are separate, and the purpose of life was to bring them in unity, especially with the divine. And so, Mercury is, rational mind, and Moon is the emotional mind, and Sun is the soul. So even to have this like Mercury, Moon, and Sun at the top, in this division, earthly division, dual Earth sign, and then the soul's purpose is like to, again, potentially reunite these different aspects with the divine spark. It's very strong. Even though I've been talking about most of these, like, because again, there are 5 planets in Purva Falguni, Uttar Falguni, which are all, again, the creativity and creativity with a goal or purpose type energy. Purva Falguni and Uttar Falguni can be related to like spiritualization of purpose. So this is somebody who, like, probably Michelangelo was very religious or spiritual and like was dedicating the statue to also um, uniting, mind, heart, spirit, soul, with the divine, or purpose in life. His purpose specifically as an artist creating statue. David is a symbol and a historical symbol, as a warrior. Um, and then, so that was not lost on me either. Oh, and then the Uttar Falguni can actually be related to, like, not just, oh, that's what I meant. I missed that part. It was like that, not just the symbol of that cannot just be, is often a hammock or marital bed, but it can actually be like a marriage, like a unification with the divine. And I think that's potentially here because Venus, I think, is in, where's Venus? Venus is in, should be in, I believe it's in Uttar Falguni, um, is the lord of the 9th house. So you have this marital bed related to the 9th house of spirituality and religion, that sort of thing. So again, I do think, like, even though we're talking about the physical statue, just the philosophy, that time of art, and um, purpose of living on the planet, is embedded in this art and this moment, this time in time. Yeah, so it was like pretty deep. I mean, again, you can get all this like, again, enjoyment and hedonism and stuff like that, but you can also get this like deeper religious, unification or marriage and stuff like that going. Like actually, what was it? I looked at Pope Leo's chart, the current pope, and he has something like that because he has Sun in Leo with if I remember correctly, K2. Um, and he has some of these things are placed in either Purva Falguni or Uttara Falguni, which seems, again, odd for the head of the Catholic Church. But when you understand that there's a relationship with those planets for him in the ninth house of spirituality, you can see that there's like a renunciation of earthly marriage and focus on divine marriage, like merging with the divine and dedicating oneself to the divine. So that's also part of all this chart here. So it's pretty deep, actually, more than just a pretty statue. Okay, so on this slide, we have the slowest moving planets: Jupiter, Guru, Saturn, Shani, and Rahu, Ketu. Some of the stuff I've talked about before, so I'm not going to go over it again. You can see the previous slides, but at least I have all the dates listed so you can see them all together. So September 4th, Jupiter is an exact aspect on Rahu. So this might be like a boost of restructuring ideology or even spiritualization of this sort of chaotic time we're experiencing early in the month. So it's sort of like almost like a thy will be done, let me surrender to this moment of this chaos. Let me surrender to um, and seek spiritual advice or solace, that sort of thing. Then September 10th, Sun crosses K2. Again, this is going to be a flashpoint, probably some sort of explosive or implosive energy, unusual end or change of leadership, and maybe even some sort of creative endeavor. And then September 11th, Mercury crosses K2 the next day. So this can bring communication, writing, and education into these changes here. And then September 17th, Mercury has an exact aspect with Saturn. And then the 21st, Sun has an exact mutual aspect with Saturn. So, again, see the previous slides, but there's going to be like a physical restructuring after the fallout from whatever happens earlier in the month. And then on the next slide, we've got Moon here. So I do separate videos, and I'll have separate videos on the lunar eclipse that's happening September 7th, and the solar eclipse that's happening September 21st. And also I've listed here again the eclipse videos that I have already posted that can help people, work with the tricky energy of eclipses, because it usually is. But just, again, the separate videos on the lunar and solar eclipse will bring a lot more detail. But just as a general first pass, September 7th lunar eclipse. This is going to be happening in Aquarius or Kumbha in Purva. So Aquarius is a fixed air sign. This is like a fixed ideology. And then Purva is this cremation, funeral pyre energy, Jyotish. So it's like this destructive ideology or wanting to destroy the fixed ideas and that sort of thing. And Mercury's going to be there too, so that doubles up on this idea of like really changing a deep set mind pattern, okay, and maybe even emotional pattern as well. So this is like potentially very um destructive potentially in a bad way, frankly, like not the way we would want, but it can also be like a very deep, again, healing energy in terms of like, let's just really flush this wound out. Because if you just put a band-aid over things fester and it can go septic and, that sort of thing. So again, it can go, I think, either way potentially, depending on where this is happening in your chart and the planets you're running. Then September 21st is a solar eclipse or surya grahan that's happening, and that's going to be in Virgo. So again, that dual earth sign. And that's going to be in Uttara Falguni. So again, there's going to be this creative, but with the goal sorting of things, dual function going on here. And we're going to have again, Mercury involved in Saturn as well. So again, a restructuring of the mind, taking a different direction. Maybe multiple talks or decisions to, again, contain the chaos that's happened earlier on. So yeah, just as a first pass. But yeah, check out those, again, the videos I have on the eclipse if you want to learn more. So, again, just generally about eclipses, a general perspective on eclipses from Vedic astrology, and then chanting mantras potentially. Yeah, so that's all there for you. Okay, so our last famous chart for this talk is this chart is for the first related to the first use of fingerprints in a murder case in the United States. So again, some strange and unusual energies. Yeah. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the chart. So this chart is oriented to 19th of September, 1910, 2 a.m. This is an approximate birth time. Okay, but it's kind of in the middle of Cancer here, so it's probably the right rising sign, ascendant, lugna. And this happened in Chicago, Illinois, United States. Okay. So the Lugna Nakshatra is a Shlesha. So again, that's snake energy. Okay. Wild and woolly and attention grabbing, mesmerizing. So something that brings a lot of attention. Okay, it's going on here. And also maybe even like an alert, very emotional because it's in Cancer, so it's a chara, jalam, movable water sign. So a lot of emotions going on here. The Sun Nakshatra is an Uttra Falguni. So again, creativity with a goal. And you can see the Sun is with Mars and Mercury and Jupiter in the third house. So we have a pravraja yoga, life focus yoga, or stellium, if you want to call it that, from a Western perspective, in the third house. So it's all about third house. This chart's really mostly about the third house. Third house relates to siblings, it relates to neighbors, it relates to non-physical, non-verbal communication. It can relate to like medically, like arms and hands. So that's what we're talking about, fingerprints here, okay? And you can see Mercury's here in Virgo in retrograde. This is a very strong Mercury, okay? And Mercury dominates all these other planets in there, including the Sun and Mars, which we've talked about, two leadership planets, and Jupiter. So Mars and Jupiter together, law. Sun and Mars together, martial, physical leadership or law enforcement. And Mercury. And guess what? Mercury happens to be in the nakshatra of, guess? Asta. The hand nakshatra. And Mercury is all about detail orientation. Okay, and Virgo is again the dual earth sign, so sorting out physical evidence or physical detail of hands, law enforcement, law, sorting out physical details of hands or fingerprints. Okay, so there's more, but already, if you want to go there right away, there you go. So the moon nakshatra is in the ninth house. It's in, the moon is in the ninth house in the nakshatra of Uccha Bhadrapada. So again, this is the backlegs of a funeral pyre. So there's all this chaos, but bringing order to chaos. Okay? And it's in the ninth house of government, authority, leadership, guru, sort of thing. So the day lord is Sun and the Hara lord is Mars. So Sun, president, government, Mars, physical. Mars can also represent siblings and enemies, and Mars is here in the third house where it's karako bhava nasha. Okay, meaning Mars is in the third house, so that brings like issues to third house, the people related to third house, so like neighbors, siblings, that sort of thing. And Sun and Mars, Mars is going to be an innovative, rebellious type of planet, and Sun and Mars together, these are the two leadership planets. Okay, so there's some new innovative leadership going on in the physical identification or sorting through of small details of hands legally. Okay. Then the Burjasha You can't make this stuff up. I mean, you really can't make this. So, you might be wondering though, like, why is this time set for 2 a.m. in the morning? This is the approximate time that the altercation took place. So I should back up a little bit. So what happened was this man named Jennings went into a home at about 2 o'clock in the morning to potentially burglarize the place. And then the man of the house was awakened and got into an altercation with the burglar, who shot him. And so he murdered Clarence Hiller. Okay. So this chart is actually about the time that um, the murder took place. Okay, it's not the time of the trial or anything like that, but you can see how this whole incident was setting up, development of using fingerprints in legal work. And so, in a way, even though this seems a little bit sort of what is it, macabre? What's the word? It's sort of like a little bit dark. You can see that there's also some kind of light here as well. Okay, so even though like it's a very dark circumstance, I'm sure nobody really wants to go through, that it actually led to more light being brought forward. And so this is kind of the energy. I felt like this chart was almost like the overriding energy for the month. Is it's like we're starting off in kind of it's a wild, turbulent, maybe even dark time. But then we're starting to dig deep, heal the wounds, and then find new creative solutions to move forward so that we get to a better place. Okay. So the birth dasha here, Saturn, Moon, Mercury. Well, Saturn is debilitated in retrograde in the 10th house. So that's in Ashwini. Ashwini is rescuing type of healing energy, but we have debilitation here of Saturn. Again, Saturn is the delays, the structures, chronic illness can be death. It's also, you can see it's at 13 degrees, 10 minutes. And it's retrograding. So it just came out of Bharani nakshatra. Bharani is about a womb, is symbolized by a womb. It's all about the cycles of life and death. So Saturn is coming out of that Bharani energy. I would say there's still a trace of it. So with Saturn and Bharani, I would see that it's more the end of a life cycle, especially since it's debilitated there. Some sort of rescue, though. So the thing is, I think the rescuing here is to try to prevent more incidences like this from occurring, because apparently this Jennings person who went into the home was a recent parolee. Like, I think had gotten out of jail like 6 weeks earlier before this happened. So clearly wasn't rehabilitated. Yeah. So anyway, we have Saturn, Moon, Mercury. So we have this pretty destructive energy going on in action, because it's the 10th house here. So some unusual, I would say deadly action, but also unusual sort of, how would I say, like a rescuing attempt going on here as well. Okay. So, and then Moon and Mercury. So, again, structures, Saturn, and then Moon and Mercury, the mind and actions going on here. Okay, physical actions related to the mind, because again, this is happening in the 3rd house of nonverbal communication. So, yeah. So how does this recreate the current sky pattern? Just so we see the similarities here. So Venus is in Leo, in Purva Falguni specifically. Sun, Mars, Mercury in Virgo, which we will have soon. Yeah, so you can see similarities here. So let's go through house by house. So again, Cancer, Karka at the top, rising sign, Lagna, movable water, a lot of emotions going on here. But intelligence as well. Cancer is both. They're known for being more intelligent, more emotional, but they're very intelligent as well. Although the emotions tend to override. Also, there's going to be this mesmerizing, attention gathering, alert type of emotional alerts, or probably emotional outburst that happened at this time because of that, again, Ashlesha snake-like energy. Then we have a pravraja yoga, again, in the 3rd house. So focus on nonverbal communication, and then neighborhood. So the second house lord is Sun, and it's gone bhavat bhavam. The second house lord has gone 2 houses away. So we have a bhavat, bhavam sun here, our second house lord. So it's going to be one discussion after another. Venus is there, and then this is also aspected by Rahu, which is in Kritika. Kritika is like a dual nakshatra, so it's like about victory and fighting, but it's also about nurturing too. So I think what's going on with this Rahu is it's like, how do you sort through kind of, repeat offenders or something? Like, how do you sort through dangerous individuals or people who've committed a crime? Like, how do you sort through and figure out, one, if they're guilty or not? Because you don't, you want to prevent more people from getting injured. But then the thing is, this guy who committed the burglary murder was a recent parolee. So it's like, how do you sort through, maybe who should stay behind bars or who not? Like, that seems like, part of the, issue going on here. And so it's like, so the duality of the Kritika Nakshatra is like, do you fight them and, keep them locked up, so to speak, or away from society? Or do you say, okay, we're going to give you another chance because you've truly, deeply rehabilitated your mind and your actions? You know what I mean? Like, how do you sort through that? Yeah, so with the Venus, like, so again, we have this creative idea, talking about some sort of creative, strange, unusual, creative idea, that's related to groups, because Venus is the lord of the 11th house of groups, of society. And then Venus is also the lord of the 10th house. So how do we use this creative technique, unusual technique, to prevent, keep people safe in their homes and in society, basically, right? So then the third house lord is the Swa retrograde Mercury in Hasta. And again, the bhavat, bhavam sun. Also, we have a combustion, karako, bhava, nashaya, Mars. So this is like this Mars, this enemy, sibling, neighbor, is someone you can't see. So there's no apparently enough physical evidence, in this case, and also there's like that's Mars is an ultrafocus. So there's some creativity that this intruder has that's, preventing, um, the truth from coming out. So I think that creativity of the intruder was like, I guess they caught him about a mile away from the home, and his coat or his clothes were torn and bloodstained or whatever. And then he said he fell off of the trolley, but he also had like a gun that was clearly just, shot something, or somebody shot off. So they brought him in for questioning. He never confessed to the murder. Um, and also the family, because there were some family members who woke up in the middle of the night or whatever, they couldn't identify him in a lineup. So without the fingerprints, being brought into the case, he probably would have been let go. So, but Mars can be, especially with Mars and Mercury together, Mars can be a thief. So a thief you can't see, but Mars and Mercury together, this is like theft of words, because Mercury can represent words, or theft of mind, like mental theft, which is basically lying. Okay, so there's some lies going on here, or mental theft, going on here, related to this situation. Okay, there's multiple discussions. So this is the lawyers discussing all this stuff. Okay, multiple talks regarding art and purpose and relevance and all this kind of thing. So then what happened was, apparently the defense lawyer, because they were arguing that this is like a new innovative technique at the time, that was being used more in Europe, I think Great Britain or something like that. And so they were trying to introduce it, as part of the case. And it set a precedent for the United States. So this is the first big case using fingerprints to convict somebody. But the defense lawyers, they said, oh, this technique doesn't work, and da 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 da. So he said, look, you can't even get my fingerprint off this piece of paper I'm going to touch or whatever. and they got the fingerprint off the paper, and it was so clear that actually the defense lawyers' attempt to dismiss the technology of fingerprinting actually convinced the jury unanimously to convict this guy. So back because it was so clear that like his fingerprint, they could get a fingerprint off the paper, and it was like clearly his or whatever. So details. So this is multiple talks, the art and purpose of organizing and cleaning, details of hands, leadership of law, problems, hidden violence of friends and neighbors. So all of that is going on in this thread. Okay, then the fourth house here, the Lord is Venus, and then we have a sandhi, so an unstable K2 in Vishaka. So this is like violent actions, happening at all costs here, like a victory of violent, deadly actions, separation at home going on at all costs. And so this is also recovering like underground, unusual, destructive victory. So this is like the skirmish, wild skirmish, deadly skirmish that's going, unusual, deadly skirmish going on in the house in the middle of the night. This is like, in some ways, it's a victory, victory, unfortunately, for the intruder, but eventually also a victory for, the whole establishment of law, really, to have this new technique as a means to help, again, figure out how to manage unruly individuals. So then what do we have? The fifth house lord, the lord is Mars. So again, Mars is combust. You can't see it, right? Mars is so close to the sun, you can't see it in the sky. So this Mars, this intruder, and Mars again is a physical planet. Like there's invisible physical advice, invisible physical evidence advice, you could say here. Also transformational energy. The sixth house lord is Jupiter. It's aspected by this invisible combust Mars again, and Rahu. So this is ambitious, wild, potentially even manic, dual ambition, multiple actions of enemies. So again, this could be like a very ambitious, malevolent, dual minded, shooting somebody and then claiming they fell off a trolley type of guy. So then the seventh house lord aspects its own sign. It's also aspected by a debilitated Jupiter here. And Saturn, Rahu as well. No, not Rahu. So Saturn and Jupiter. So there's, but Saturn is with Rahu. So there's some ambitious, unusual rescue to build a structure around weak laws. So that's what I mean is like, that's why even though it's, on the surface and for the family and the community, like this is like, a very tragic circumstance, in the end, by bringing to light this new innovation, these creative ideas, trying to sort through the, mental, emotional fallout of this, wild situation, order was brought around for the long term and for the system. And so, again, that's the kind of silver lining of the energy that we're dealing with this month. How do we bring about systemic long-term change so we don't have to keep going back to this, mess kind of. So then the eighth house lord is Saturn, aspected by Venus. So creative art, hidden talk group, Um, so again, this creativity is deep in the eighth house of psychology. And, but again, this, how do you say, like, Saturn is the lord of the eighth house of scandal. So it's like, again, bringing to light, what actually happened. Like, because again, Rahu is going to bring hiddenness. So we have this like hidden, some murder happened clearly, but like the hidden details or the hidden perpetrator is unknown until this fingerprinting technique comes into play here. Yeah. So, and again, it's like trying to create new creative technology to unearth the truth of this situation, event. Yeah. So then the ninth house here, the ninth house lord is Jupiter. We've got a full moon in Uttara aspected by Sun, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter. So again, there's a protection, dual sentiment too about bringing order to this chaotic public situation, creative actions, leadership, detailed structure, handle. So basically, this whole 3-9 axis is being lit up here. The two authority planets of Sun and Mars and Jupiter. Again, that's physical law and order, police enforcement or law enforcement type of energy and adjudication, and then the hidden detailed truths of the situation, trying to bring those to light. Then the 10th house lord is Mars. We have a retrograde Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu there. Yeah. So victory and ambition, but unusual destructive rescue of this fighting, nurturing, like what do we do in these situations where we don't have any obvious, overwhelming physical evidence? And so to, again, ultimately keep people safe, that's what's on the um, order of the day or docket of the day. In the 11th house lord is Venus, aspected by Jupiter. So this is the, again, arts or establishment of, um, new legal structure, new legal development, social law, that sort of thing. Then the 12th house lord is Mercury. It's aspected by this debilitated Saturn. So this is, again, control, loss of indecision, lacking physical evidence. So what I kept seeing here was it's like the good news of this, if there is a good news, of this murder that happened and this case that happened is that, again, this is like revamping, the system in a positive way going forward for long term of society. So, yeah, so there is a bit of this sort of dark martyr energy for Clarence Hiller, who passed away, and his family. But hopefully, again, not without some purpose, like not just meaningless and without, some form of, again, correction or betterment for the whole of society moving forward. Yeah, so kind of a wild story, both the scene itself, but then also like what came out of it. Um, the other thing too, and this is like again like one of these very specific particular details. So apparently, where they found the fingerprints for this Jennings guy was that I guess as he was leaving the house after he got in an altercation and shot Clarence Hiller, he was running out of the house and he grabbed a railing. And so 4 fingerprints were found on this railing, and apparently the police cut this railing, like literally cut it out and brought it to the courthouse or whatever. But the fingerprints, they were specifically 4 fingerprints. Okay, I'm guessing not the thumb, maybe, I don't know which 4 fingerprints. But look how many planets are in the 3rd house here. There's 4 planets. I was like, is that like one of those, wink wink, sort of smiles by, the powers that be that there's no coincidences here. I mean, that, again, 4 fingerprints found, and we have 4 planets in the 3rd house of this Virgo, Swa, Mercury, retrograde, detail, hand, sorting out the specific small details of hands. I mean, I was just like, wow. So it blew me away. So anyway, hopefully you appreciate that. I certainly did. Okay, so as always, thanks so much for stopping by, listening to one of my talks. I really appreciate all your support of my work in the channel. Again, all my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are my consults playlist. They can be found there. For more famous birth charts, you can check out my birth chart archive list 2025 video, where I list all the famous charts I've analyzed on the channel and videos you can find them in. If you're interested in individual birth chart readings, I do offer those. You can email heartlightastro@yahoo.com for more info on that. Or if you're interested in my upcoming Vedic astrology class, which is happening in January, again, applications will be available September 29th, Monday. Or if you'd like to be put on the list to know about future offerings, you can email me there. Okay. I do also have another YouTube channel on natural medicine where I talk about Ayurveda and yoga. So Ayurveda is traditional Indian medicine, and yoga, so other Vedic arts and other paradigms of natural medicine like homeopathy, naturopathic medicine. The name of that channel is Nature Source Care. So that's out there too as a resource for you. All right. So as always, I hope you found this talk helpful, useful, and interesting to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right. So take good care. Until the next one. Namaste.